I just think like with anything, there's no outcome with mental health, right? There's no end goal. There's no final whistle. You're feeling good for a period of time until you're not feeling good, And it's just like anything. You've just got to keep working at it, whether it's a relationship or work or whatever. You just got to keep evolving and growing in it. A couple of years ago, everything was understanding and awareness and all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden COVID hits. We're all locked up at home. We're not being able to exercise. We've got no interaction, So there's always going to be something that's thrown at you that's different, which is why it's important to keep moving forward in that area.
We are melting. We are absolutely melting for this podcast. Oh, we started. Oh, right. Oh, look at that timing. That was ridiculous. How are you, bro? Welcome back. Did I wear this? I think you've worn it. Dude, you wore that way too much. We need new wardrobe. You wore this. You are actually, like, when it comes to fashion, you have no brain cells.
That's why I'm not wearing it again.
Oh, okay.
Dude, I think it's good. We need that service where you trade in clothes.
You know what? Sick of that tracksuit. I like it. I like the tracksuit. So big.
I am very, very excited. I'm going down to get Drew Mitchell. He is a 70-plus Wallaby. So he's played for Australia 70 times. So I'm a rugby fan. I am fucking pumped for this one.
Yeah, nice. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey, so I got a story, Drew, that I wanted to see if you could remember.
Yeah.
The Wallabies had like a private venue on top of us, drinking pretty heavily, and you climbed out through the window, tiptoed across the awning, got the jersey, signed it.
I think I remember the night. I'm pretty sure I remember the exact same time you're talking
Well, I had an image that the Wallabies didn't drink that much on the World Cup campaign, but I was I was wrong.
It's balance, right?
Going down.
Train hard, play hard, and then have a few drinks.
Like 6.
So used to moving and changing.
Nice.
Fellas,
Oh, bro. How you doing?
You're
Welcome. Looking fresh.
what's going on?
Welcome, bro.
Jeez, got
Oh,
the kit, nice.
Yeah, bro.
I think it worked out. Fireball's fucking great. It just tastes like Christmas.
Oh, it tastes so good. Yeah.
It doesn't match.
Media training. Feedback.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
Always got to get that energy up.
Yeah.
I feel like such a dick. Like I stand there in the commentary box and they're like just big energy, and you're like, and you got to match because the guy who's the play-by-play caller, they've always got huge energy, and then like they can't have the energy go from there, and then when you speak, it kind of goes down. Yeah, I'm like, oh that was a great play. I feel like a dick.
All right, My Muscle Project, welcome back. We are going to go deep today on a few topics that are slightly controversial, but I think they're important to talk about. We'll see how much Drew wants to get into them, but Drew Mitchell, welcome to the My Muscle Project.
Thanks for having me, boys.
Yeah,
pleasure.
It's good because you're actually you're a locker room client first and a podcast guest second, which is cool. I was debating whether or not to admit this, but when we before we first spoke on the phone, I had the idea. So like last year we had an ambassador team. Basically, it was just a bunch of really good-looking influencer girls. Turns out our demographic doesn't really follow them, or it doesn't really work. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna redo the ambassador team this year. Like, who am I gonna get? And I really thought, I'm like, you know what? I reckon like the rugby union crowd is like very similar to what we have at the gym. And so I contacted Michael Dow, mutual friend. So shout out to Dowie. And I was like, dude, who do you know that could like? Let me sit down. Let me pick your brain. Who do you know that could like be someone that we'd bring in here that would be actually useful? And like the first name that came up was you. He was like, dude, you got to get Drew. But you know what? I'm gonna call him out here. If he's listening to this, sorry, Dow. He was shitting himself to contact you.
Really?
Absolutely shitting himself.
Yeah, right. I mean, we never played with each other.
Right.
I think it was sort of, when he was coming through, it was the back end of my career here in Australia, and then I was over in France for a number of years, and then, we kind of just got to know each other probably more around the traps in Bondi and through mutual friends and stuff.
Yeah. I think maybe like a little fanboy moment for him. But anyway, you got back to him because he was like, oh, I can't promise anything. I don't think he really knows me or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, you got back to him. He's like, text me. He's like, he got back to me. What do I say? And he calls me. He calls me. He's like, dude, tell me what to say next. I'm like, all right, write this out word for word.
Just copy and paste this.
Yeah, but then we spoke, and obviously hadn't. I mean, I don't follow rugby at all. The last time, if you said who's playing in the Wallabies these days, I would say like, I don't know, George Gregan or
like it's been a while since he's played. Yeah.
I've just never. Like my household, we didn't do anything to do with rugby. It's because our necks are too long. Honestly, my mum thought it was a death sentence. Us playing rugby, so we did. It's funny because my brother ended up becoming a professional cage fighter. So I don't think the strategy worked, but so I just didn't really know much about it. But then I tell Raf, I'm like, got this call with this guy Drew Mitchell, and Raf didn't believe me.
Yeah,
he shit himself. He goes, no.
Well, before you just brought in hot girls, and then he's like, Drew, this is a big departure.
This is somewhat removed.
Yeah. So So then obviously, yeah, we got to know each other a little bit, and turned out you had you basically, as Raf put it, started at the end of like probably the best era of Australian rugby, and then kind of finished up just before we entered into sort of the worst era of Australian rugby, if you want to put it that way. So you got the sweet spot, which is good.
I got when I first started back in like my first Wallaby tour was 2004. With the likes of Griggs and
you did play together.
Yeah. He was my first roommate in Wallaby camp. And he was a captain. I was like super nervous, and I didn't drink coffee, didn't like anything at that point. Like I was pretty
good boy.
Yeah, I was a good boy, but like drinking wasn't really. I mean, I drank, but it wasn't like it was when the back end of my career. But like coffee and things like that. So I'd room with him, and George Gregan, he's got his own coffee franchise company, right? So coffee's like his thing. So we'd be in Coffs Harbour. He'd bring his own coffee machine into our sort of shared accommodation. So it'd be sort of like the two service departments next to each other. So there's one door that went into then two separate doors, but one common area in the bigger room, right? So George had the bigger room with the common area with like the kitchen and the living room. And then my room was sort of off that.
You were the rook.
Yeah, I was the rook, right? And then but then George Gregan would be like, mate, I'll cook up dinner tonight. You want to come over? And I'm like, sure. And I'm not going to say no, right? And it's the captain, it's George. And so I sit there at dinner and he makes up this pasta. And it became pretty clear that we just didn't have, like at that point in my life, like we didn't have anything in common other than rugby, right? Like, I mean, and I was too nervous to talk to him about rugby because he was my captain and it was George Gregan.
So he sat there and
and I just sat there because like he had kids, he was married, he was just like, just a different stage of our lives. And then at the end he's like, mate, do you want an affogato? And I was like, love one. Didn't know what it was. And then of course it was, like a scoop of ice cream with like the strongest type of coffee you can have, and I'd have that. And he's like, and we'd have early training sessions and meetings and things. I'd already missed the plane to my first ever Wallaby camp as well. Oh. So I had to come a day later because it was down in Coffs Harbour, not many flights at those times.
What happened? You slept in?
Yeah, I just read, I was just too nervous and just read it wrong and then just got there too late. And
terrible
going back to that, like the day before I had like a photo shoot for the newspaper and it was there with my suitcase was already packed like the day before. I was super keen, but I just got the times wrong. And so like Wendell's like, look at this fucking bloke, fucking like his bag's packed and he still doesn't make it. Anyway, and so I was super nervous about being late to any meeting, any training session. So I was like an hour before and like my alarm, I was just like up, right? And then of course I have this affogato and the caffeine just fucking hits me.
Oh no.
And so like, I just basically said, oh, good night, George, thanks for dinner. And then I just like go and lay in my bed, just like, and then like an hour before my alarm, I'm straight back up. I'm probably just running on adrenaline more than anything. But yeah, so back to the start, like sort of got those guys, like the George Gregans, the Jeremy Pauls, Justin Harrison, Wendell Saylor, Lottie Takiri, guys that, George Smith as well, guys that had fun off the field. Yeah. Because they were kind of transitioning out of the amateur era as well, towards the back end of the 90s into the early 2000s, and then having to start to adapt to the professional era, right?
Right.
But it's not like it is today. There's no social media. There's no one going out with like cameras on their phones. Yeah. So it just was a culture of like if you drink, you front up the next day, and if you can't, then we won't let you drink the next time we go out. Right. Like it's just sort of like. It was almost like, okay, just go out. So long as it doesn't hinder your performance, if you can front up, then you can play up, and that was sort of the mindset, right? Like and like, and to the boys' credit, like if someone wasn't able to front up at training, then they just like, right, mate, you're not coming to this team social, or you just sort of.
So how many guys would actually play and practice hungover then?
Oh, I mean,
like the whole team.
I mean, no. I mean, they'd be like the before the like recovery days or something, right? Because like you play a game and then you go out. Like of course you're going to go out, but we'd still have recovery at 9, and recovery was sort of it's pretty chill. Like it wasn't sort of like no one was going into like hard team sessions and like contact sessions. Like I mean, probably the odd occasion there was probably one or two, but generally speaking, like boys are pretty good because I mean when you're in a test match preparation, like you wouldn't want to leave any sort of stone unturned, but at the same time, if you've got 7 days out, if you just won a test, you're going out. You're in Paris, you're going out.
Yeah. So when was your professional debut and then was your Wallaby debut? How far apart were they?
So I played 2004 for the Reds. I don't know, maybe sort of Feb or March. Went on the spring tour, which is like November in 2004. And to get capped, you've got to step on the field.
Capped is joining the
to join the Wallabies.
Yeah.
You get like so when they say cap, you know those old school English caps with like little,
it's like the baggy greens.
Yeah, it's like that.
Yeah.
Every Wallaby, everyone who's played for the Wallabies or Wallaroos, get a number. So I'm the 799th person to play for the Wallabies. So
so it's similar to locker room.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
right.
Same
so
thing, right?
Yeah,
so that's step on the gym.
Yeah, so that's my cap number. But
Yeah, cool.
So in 2004, I was named on the bench to play England at Twickenham. And, you know, the boys are going pretty well. And at half-time, Eddie Jones comes in and myself and Matt Henjack were there. And he said, mate, get ready because you're going on, mate. And I was like, fuck yeah. How good. My parents had flown over to
sick.
England. Like, they'd been around the whole tour, you know, about to see their boy play. And then game got a bit tighter. And then I was like looking down at the coach, not getting anything back. Played out the 80, didn't get on.
Oh, no.
And that was the last game of the year.
Oh, no.
And then I was, you know, the boys were pumped and, you know, like we'd beaten England in England, which is, you know, it was huge. But also I was so close to achieving what I wanted to achieve, but still was, you know, effectively pretty far away from it. And John Muggleton, who was an old Parramatta, you know, rugby league great, and he was our defensive coach, he comes up and he goes, don't worry, mate, you're not ready anyway. Oh, I went, you're a fucking asshole. Like,
I feel great now.
Like, yeah. I'm like, you don't tell someone that. Like, even if you think it, that's not the time.
So at that point, you would have been what, 21?
21, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. And then
what was the youngest Wallaby
20
debut?
years. I think maybe James O'Connor.
What's that?
Maybe when he was
18?
18 or 19 or something.
Dude,
Yeah.
even man-child.
And then
Horse
and then
things.
I played the Super Rugby 2005, and then debuted in June or July or something of 2005.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Where was that?
That was in
game?
Sydney against the Springboks. So I
Okay.
came off the bench and I got about 35 minutes, and we just the boys were doing a number on South Africa, and I came on and off the bench.
Icing
and
on the cake.
I was in the centres because there was a number of injuries. I came off for Morgan Trudeau, he did his calf. 5 minutes into the second half. I ended up playing my first test in the centres with Wendell Saylor. Like,
Oh, wow.
I mean, he's never played centre ever, except for pretty much that game. You know, that was just how the makeup of the game sort of went. We just had to sort of shuffle around a little bit and end up scoring a try on debut, which is cool.
Yeah, sick.
And then, and then sort of I played 10 test matches 2005,
Yeah.
and then got a bit on myself and thought things were going to keep tracking that way, and played 0 in 2006.
Wow. So they pick the team every year based off performance.
They pick it every series. So
okay, wow.
there's like almost 3 different Wallaby squads each year, because there'll be like the July test, which is against a touring team. So this year, for example, it's England are coming to here for three test series, and then that'll finish and they'll reassess, and it'll be like a rugby championship with Tri-Nations back in my day, South Africa, New Zealand, and which is also the Bledisloes are involved in that. And then after that, they go again for the spring tour. Spring tour, there's always usually a few extra sort of young blokes, a bit more exposure to that environment. But yeah. So each time, 2006, I didn't get picked for anything until the spring tour, but still didn't get a jersey on game day.
Is that just because what happens is you try so hard? I imagine what it's like as a pro athlete to, not to have any idea, but you try so hard to achieve a goal, and once you hit that goal, there's always like a plateauing moment where the hunger dies off a little bit, and you think, well, kind of, I've arrived, and then
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, it's the immaturity, right? Like it's the not knowing that your effort got you there, but to keep you there, you're gonna have to keep applying the same, if not more effort, right? And I just thought, well, I've got it here. It's just going to keep tracking the same way. Like, and you know, in 2005 when I played the 10 games, I was like scoring tries, and it was all like, it wasn't like it was easy, but it was like, fuck, like I'm here now. I'm gonna be here for a while. And and so like in 2006, the first Wallaby squad was named, and they were training at Ballymore, which is like the Queensland Reds sort of set up where I was at the time. And I was driving in to get some physio from the Reds physio, and saw all the boys there training. I was like,
oh, you realised you weren't invited?
I was like, well, I guess I didn't make that squad.
That's so awkward.
Yeah, it's brutal. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, there was times back in those days, like where you'd find out just on TV. Like, I was sitting with a roommate of mine, Josh Valentine, who played halfback, and we went in the morning to Wallaby, like full extended squad training, and they said, squad's going to be announced at lunchtime and whatever. And both Josh and I, they said, we'll see you this afternoon, kind of just don't know if that was just in passing, but they sort of said that. And we're sitting there having lunch, and then and on this one particular occasion, the Wallaby squad came up, and I saw my name, but Valo was like, fuck. Well, I don't know what to do because they said I'll see you this afternoon. Do I go or do I not?
Like, he was just talking to me.
I mean, it's pretty brutal. Like you think these days at least now, guys, and like you get a phone call just letting you know one way or the other.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't as always like that.
So did the allure of being a Wallaby ever diminish over your career? Because it's a long career. Because I think, you take a sport like tennis, for example, right? No one really cares if you're in the Davis Cup team. I guess obviously there's not as many Australian players, but it's less exciting than to win Wimbledon, right? Or to win Roland Garros or whatever. Whereas like for rugby, even for soccer, it's like making the national team is like everything else is kind of about making the national team. Yeah, it's great you win a A-League championship, but how you're building up for the World Cup. I just want to be in the World Cup squad. Yeah. So was that correct? Is that the case? Yeah. I
mean, for me, like that was always, I grew up playing rugby league from when I was young, like sort of 5 years old.
Where did you grow up? What part?
Sort of everywhere. My dad was in the army, so we just moved around a lot up and down the East Coast. I went to 6 different primary schools in Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland, but then settled in Queensland when Dad was based at Onogra Barracks in Brizzy. But then it wasn't until I went to secondary school when I was 13 where I started playing union, and I was just doing both on the weekend. So for the 13 to 18, I was doing league and union, and I don't know, I just enjoyed union more. I just felt like it was just more variation, I think. And I still watch league, so I'm not like a hater on the sport by any means, but I just felt it was really repetitive, right? Like it's like 3 forward hit ups. You go wide and you play the second man play out the back, and then you go to your kick and you want to get a repeat set, right? Like that to me, like it's more about the physical nature of the game, like 1-on-1, who's stronger, who's fitter, who's rather than the intricacies and the smarts about trying to manipulate defense and set piece and that type of stuff. Because like for us, like a genuine opportunity, one of the only opportunities you get to go 1-on-1 with someone is off a set piece, off a scrum, because all those forwards are bound to that scrum because they've got to compete for it, right? So then it's one of those opportunities where, okay, we've got this back line, this is our opportunity to really try and manipulate them and get a 1-on-1 with someone. And so like trying to think about how we're going to do that and come up with different plays depending on who's defending in the opposition team, like if they shoot, if they hold off, all that. Yeah, so to me the variation was something that really appealed to me. And then also when I started making some representative teams for both, someone said to me, because I was offered like a Jersey flag contract for the Canterbury Bulldogs. And
so that's to go to rugby league?
To go to rugby league, and also like a Reds academy contract, like a junior academy for the Reds. And someone said, Drew, you play rugby league, you can play in Townsville and Newcastle. You play rugby union, you can play in Paris and London. I was like, sweet.
That's an upgrade.
Hey, that's a fucking good way to put it.
Did you care about, do you think like, I can make more money in this sport? Like,
no, not at that point. I mean, I wouldn't have known necessarily. Like, I would have thought they're probably on par with one another. And I think, you look at the top players in both sports, they're probably on par. There's a number of sort of $1 million players in league now. There's the same sort of running around. I mean, there's some big numbers getting thrown up now with players going to Japan and France and those types of places. But no, it was never really about the cash. I just really enjoyed it more. And I think also just the environment that probably unfairly for rugby league, but for union, I was playing at school with guys that I was going through life with, I was like from 13 to 18 when I was at school. Like we were going through like first kiss, first girlfriend, first breakup, like first fight, like all these different things, failing at school, doing well at school, all the anxieties that you have as a kid going through puberty, and you're kind of doing it with your best mates that you're playing rugby with as well, right? Whereas then rugby league, I'd go to Tuesday and Thursday nights to go down, and sure, I got along with them well, but like I didn't know them, I wasn't
they weren't your boys,
and so I think that probably maybe sway a bit more towards union as well, just because I was enjoying like the environment and the people and that connection with people is like probably a bit more than I was with league. So had it been different, I don't know, maybe if I went to a league school, maybe it would have been different.
Yeah, do you think you could have excelled further in league, like retrospectively looking at it based off your attributes and skills?
I don't know, to be honest. Like I think I mean, I would assume I would have played similar sort of position, like out wide, like in the back three, wing or fullback. But yeah, I don't know. I'd never really sort of thought about it. I didn't really genuinely, look into the option of going to league during my career, because once I got a taste of the Wallaby jersey, like I just, and I went to the 2007 World Cup, got dropped for the quarterfinal for my best mate.
You got dropped?
Yeah. So I was playing. I was 23. It was my first World Cup over in France, and I was a top try scorer of the comp at the time. And John Connolly dropped me. Just said, I don't know. Just on a hunch, I'm.
Don't know.
Like cut you from the squad?
No, just like to the bench. We're playing England in the quarterfinal, and Adam Ashley Cooper went to my starting spot, and I went to the bench and got like 10 minutes, and we bowed out in the quarterfinal to England.
Well, that's fucking why you sat.
Yeah.
Sat Mitchell on the bench.
Yeah. And but once you got a taste of that, then I was like, okay, I need to get to the next World Cup. I need to be there. And then 4 months before the next World Cup in 2011, I dislocated my ankle and spun it around the wrong way. 4 months before. Now I got back to playing, and I got picked based on history rather than current form, because I'd played 20 minutes of club footy before that World Cup.
Fuck.
And then went to New Zealand, didn't have the miles in my legs, right? So my second game.
What World Cup is this?
2011.
11.
In New Zealand, my second game, I went to pick up a ball against Russia. Hamstring popped.
Fuck.
On the next plane home.
Just fatigue.
It was just like, just didn't have the miles in it. So like, obviously before that, all my training was monitored and, stripped back a little bit just to kind of cater for what I needed, right? But then sometimes, like, you're in those environments in the World Cup, if you're not in the starting team, you're prepping the other team, you're doing all the reps, you're doing all the contact, you're doing everything. And after a little while, it was the opposite hamstring went. So I think with all the rehab and whatever, like my left hamstring was taking a lot of the load.
Yeah.
And after a while, it just I'd scored 2 tries against Russia, and I was picking up the ball to get the record for the most tries by any Australian at a World Cup or at World Cups, and popped it, and that was it.
So when you went in 2015, it's obviously a great World Cup, you'd basically waited like 8-10 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess this goes back to your question, Lockie, about whether the appeal of the Wallaby jersey maintains itself throughout the course of your career. Because when I made a decision to go play in France for Toulon, at that point, if you go play overseas, you can't play for Australia. So like, my decision to decision to go to France was also my decision to effectively stop playing for the Wallabies.
Is that a Wallabies only thing? Because
pretty
Sonny
much.
Bill still plays for New Zealand, even though he's in Europe, right?
No. Well, he wasn't getting picked when he was over there. He was getting picked when he was back at Super Rugby.
Who doesn't pick Sonny Bill?
Yeah,
that's just because they make more money, right? So they just don't want them to go.
Yeah, but I mean, well, that, and also they just want their best players playing.
Is that a political thing?
No, I mean, look, it's.
Don't worry, it's a safe space.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like, I think we hinder ourselves on a global scale. Like one thing that we say in rugby union is that it's a global game. We like celebrate the fact that it's a global game, and yet they say, well, we can't play globally and still play for Australia, right? Yeah. And I get it. Look, I get it. They're broadcasting deals, big money deals, and the Channel 9s and the stands of the world want the best players playing in Super Rugby because we're broadcasting that. And if all our best players are playing in France and Japan, then it's not the best product that we can, and that's my stand and my Channel 9 hat on. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, we haven't had the results for a long time, right? Internationally, globally, that we haven't had the results, and we're in a really competitive market. When I say, us, like rugby in Australia is in a really competitive market because we're up against AFL, Rugby League, even A-League, cricket, all these sports, right?
Basketball.
It's a really dense market, like sporting market, right? And so, and naturally, you get interest, whether it be from supporters or from brands and corporate, right? If you're successful. And I just think that we're hampering ourselves, we're cutting ourselves at the knees if we're not picking our best players. And, and I think in some ways, like, for Rugby Australia to say players have to be playing in Australia to be picked for Australia, and yet the entire coaching setup that we've got at the Wallabies have all been picked from overseas, I think he's taking the piss.
Well, look at the Socceroos, right? We had our best performance ever. Hardly any of the players from that team were playing in Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like the A-League's been pretty rubbish for a while, but even even then, like they wouldn't even consider that. You know,
Yeah.
they would just go, "We want the best team possible to
Yeah.
take on the world."
Yeah, and I think and Rugby Australia have put the best coaching team possible to coach
From
our
anywhere
team,
in the
right?
world.
That should be the
And
goal.
other than
Shouldn't
like
be
Dan
anything
McKellar,
else.
I think who's the current head coach of the Brumbies. He's also an assistant for the Wallabies. Outside of that, Dave Rennie came from overseas.
Yeah.
Duplessis came from overseas. Like everyone's coming from overseas. I'm like, so if it's good for the coach, if you see that it's beneficial to their career to go overseas and gain some type of knowledge and understanding of how the game's played somewhere
Yeah.
else and bring that to the Wallabies, then why would the player not have the same type of effect? So, and also because I benefited from it, right? So when I went over to Toulon,
Is that French team?
yeah, the same team as where Sonny jumped
Okay.
on the plane, and so he was there 2 years before me.
Is this like PSG in football? Is this like the French team?
It was for a little while.
Okay.
The owner that we had there was like a bit of a crazy fellow, and he treated it like a fantasy sports team.
Sick.
And like we had like
He was like cashed up, right?
he was cashed up, but he just like if there was someone in world rugby that was making headlines, he'd pick him. Like
Yeah.
Johnny Wilkinson was our captain, he kicked the goal in 2003. Like we had Matt Giddo, we had Brian Abana, like Marn Nonu.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Yeah,
the
we
Lakers.
It was, and we had a really successful period, but it wasn't sustainable either. But
Yeah.
and so 2015, Matt Giddo, I was playing with him at Toulon, and he started getting some phone calls from Michael Checker, the Wallabies coach, just sort of feeling out whether he was interested because it'd been a little while. See, Gitz got brushed for the 2011 World Cup from Robbie Deans, and that was when he went to Toulon, and he hadn't been in that environment for a while, and so he was just feeling whether he wanted to have any involvement. Got to the point where he's like, "Mate, I'm going to pick you," because the form he's in, he's killing it, winning European championships and French championships. And then, and I was, I'm Giddy's best mate. I'm like, oh, was Czech asking about me?
How's it feel about Drew?
Yeah.
Oh, Drew boy here.
Yeah, and like nothing. And then I scored a try in the Champions Cup final against Clermont at Twickenham, and I got inside afterwards. It was like, there's the final, we won the final, but I had a voicemail from Michael Checker, and I walked outside and I was like, g'day mate, you want to just give me a call? And
Nice.
so I was like, I got to put my celebrations on hold. I need to know what this is. And effectively he said, mate, we want to bring you back as well.
Mm.
And that was when they basically just changed the rule to get myself and Gitz back. And yeah, that was like a pretty interesting time coming back.
So tell me a little bit about this European league, because I find it very interesting. I understand it's very obvious in football that it's significantly many times better, but it's not always 100% clear how much better it is in especially basketball and rugby. They're kind of like the sports we excel at, the global sports that a lot of our players go to Europe, and you think, well, we never watch the games over there. We don't know anything about the leagues, but like what's the like fan base like over there compared to here? And then what's the pay like? I mean, you don't have to give me numbers, but like multiples.
In the media, you're always going to get like inflated numbers, right? Like I wish I was earning what they were talking about in the media, but
Drew Mitchell Network.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn.
I mean, you've got to. I mean, they're also doing it to sort of try and justify why players would leave during their career to go play elsewhere. I mean, like it was sold to me. Rugby was sold to me effectively as a global game. Like the fact that you could go play in these places. Like I wanted to do that while I still had something to contribute to a squad, not just in the last 2 years of my career to cash in and just be the old guy that's sort of filling up squad numbers, but yeah, so the numbers, so the Wallabies, you can get like a certain amount, but then with your match payments, you probably get another 150, 170k or something, right? If you play each test match each year.
On top of your salary.
On top of your salary.
Yeah.
So, but that's not guaranteed, right? So effectively that amount with the match payments I was getting in France. Guaranteed. But I was, when we won the two series, the two titles, we won the European one weekend in Cardiff at Millennium Stadium, and the very next weekend played the top 14 championship final in Paris at Stade de France. So the two finals back to back. We played 42 games that year. So like,
dude, that's crazy.
like you're earning your money. Like it's like
so much, bro.
Yeah, like it's like it's a shitload of footy. Like it's so. Whilst you're going over there and getting good cash, like you're going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, of course, you see on our socials and that it was south of France, rosé, oysters, Mediterranean, all the rest of it. And there was a bit of that, don't get me wrong.
But
I mean,
cooked.
a fair bit of that. But yeah, your body's like, and it was important. And looking back on it, I was really lucky in the team that I went to, because we had a really deep squad, like I was talking about before. Like our second string team were internationals, like from all around the world, as well as our first string, right?
But why was it not sustainable, that team? Like financially, they couldn't sustain it?
For a number of reasons, right? Like financially, I think the biggest thing was the coaching. Like we didn't do any contact, like no contact at training.
Because they're all like...
Well, yeah, the coach was like, look, there's enough opportunity to get injured in games. We're not going to
42
give you
games,
opportunities, at training. And there was just enough experience in the squad, like Bucky's Botha from South Africa, Juan Smith, all these like really hard-edged internationals that we played against. And I want them to respect me. I want them to think that I'm worthy of being on the field with them. So like, at no point did you skirt from your job, right? Because then you'd like, shit, imagine one of those guys that you'd respected and you played against all your career. Imagine like their perception of you was greater than the reality, you know? Like, and so that was sort of like, there was just this mutual respect amongst the whole squad. You're like, I don't want to let Johnny Wilkinson down. I don't want to let Matt Giddo or Brian Banner or these, like, it was really a culture that was bred within the players. Like, you know, like, because we didn't want to almost like let them down or let them think that I wasn't worthy of being out in the field with them. Like, and so from that, everyone just aimed up. And then once you start having Johnny retire and a few of these big dogs retire, and you could just sort of see the standards at training start to waver. You know, in games, we were losing games that we probably should have won because of those types of working hard for each other, like all those little things that you're not going to see on a highlight reel, all the little sort of 1% things that we see in reviews, but you don't see on TV necessarily. We weren't hitting those marks anymore. And then, you know, we won 3 European championships back to back, and a French 14 championship in the middle of that as well. But then we just sort of started to lose quarterfinals and semi-finals and the others, and it just, you know, and to now where they're fighting relegation in Toulon. You know, that was I retired 5 years ago. That's a pretty steep decline, right? Like there's a different owner there now, and they've kind of gone away from the foreigners and just trying to build their own local talent. But yeah, I think as well, like when we had the team that we had and we had the success that we had, that, you know, maybe it was like 2006 for my career, you know, but in a team sense that we thought it was going to keep happening and we weren't putting in the work, and the result was, you know, not getting the result, well, not getting the championships and the trophies.
What about like the fan base and the stadium over there? Is it different?
Nuts. It's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Like,
so it's full stadiums.
Yeah, like
intense
Toulon
fan base.
where I lived, there was 110,000 people there. It's like a pretty working class sort of town, naval base.
In the stadium?
No. So in the city, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
And there's only 18,000 seat stadium. Stud Mayor where we played. Like,
still big, 18,000. Yeah.
But it's like suburban, right? Like, and it's epic. Like, everyone in the city loves their team because we're south as well. So north, it's not as much. North is a bit more football. South is a bit more rugby. I mean, there's still teams up in the north that are well supported, but they're like fanatical down south because you're also like, you're a one-team town. Like our region was Marseille to Monaco, right? So we had like, and there was there's I think Allianz Stadium in Nice, which has 40,000. So we take some games to Nice. And then there's the Velodrome in Marseille, which is 60,000. So we take some of our bigger games to the Velodrome. Every single game sold out.
Crazy.
Like every game. Right?
And they get behind foreigners, like they like Australians.
But look, when we were there, like you do your groceries, and if you play well, they're like, "Hey, Drew, allez," you know, like felicitation. You know, they get around you, right? They love you. Like you're just sitting there doing you're getting a baguette or whatever. You're just like getting your stuff. But if you play shit, geez, man, they jump into you as well. Like the same thing.
Accountability.
Just doing your doing your shopping and like you could. I didn't really. I mean, I just knew what they were saying more because of their body language. That they're filthy at me, and I'd be like, bonjour, you know, like just sort of pretend that I just didn't know and just kind of keep walking off. But I mean, the good thing about, I mean, we'll go back to the fans, but the good thing about playing over there is you train, you go home, and there's nothing about rugby because I don't watch French TV. I don't read the newspapers. Like I don't look at any of the social stuff. Like, so I didn't know what anyone was talking about me or what the hype was or whether it was good, bad, positive or indifferent or whatever.
And that's a good thing you're saying.
Yeah, and I just got away from it. I just go down and we just spend our time playing pétanque, whatever, like which is bocce or you know, like just doing whatever, like just exploring the south of France and whatever. But anyway, going back to the fans, like, mate, they travel anywhere. Like when we won the double, we came back the next day, and we got a bus around to sort of this area around near the port, because it's like a port city, right? And our stadium's right near the port. And there's footage of this like on YouTube. Like we got on a boat, and we came around with like the cups and the trophies and stuff. And there would have been hundreds of boats just like following us in, like all tooting, and everyone's drinking, music playing, and there's confetti everywhere. But then we got to the port, and there was like 115,000, like there were more people that live in Toulon were on the port and on the main street. Like I'm getting goosebumps now. Like it was like the most amazing experience. And we parked up on the boat, and we were just like, mate, it was just like so incredible. And to share that like with Gitz, like, like my best mate, and, I'm the godfather to his boys and his best man, to be able to share that with someone that you're so close with, like kind of what I was talking about at the school, right? Guys that you genuinely connected with, to share that moment and just like take it in. And, we went up onto a balcony, and it's one of those things, where there's people
like
making speeches, and it's just like, and for as long as the eye could see, it was just people. Like,
that's mad.
It was nuts, man. And then we go down in the back of a semi-trailer, sort of just edging our way towards the main city square, wherever they had a stage set up and whatever. People are just throwing beers up into the truck, and we're throwing up bottles of whiskey, and we're just like, mate, it was just like, it was like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so like, it's nothing that I've experienced here in terms of like the amount that the fans get around you and support you. Who knows, maybe, once we see the Wallabies win a World Cup again, something similar will happen to 99 or something where, there's a ticker tape parade and that type of thing. But those types of experiences are something I'll carry for a long time. And even like every single game at home, we get a bus into the stadium, and there's a walk from where you get off the bus to the stadium. It's 100 meters long, and you're just down in, and there's just thousands of people, and we're just sort of like a little sort of snake walking through it, of like single file getting off the bus, and they're all just slapping on the chest and on the back, allez, Drew, allez. And it's like, Toulon, just like doing our chant and whatever. And like, those moments, man, like that was seriously epic. When I first turned up, I was like, fuck. Like, even though Gitz kind of gave me a heads up about what it's going to be like, words couldn't do it justice. It was really cool.
So it's cool that moments like that stick out for you.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to be in a Wallabies jersey, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You didn't have to get to that level. I mean, obviously that team was fucking good. You had to be good to be in that team. But they exist at the club level, which I think is nice. I mean, like, we got this guy Alex at the gym who played first grade German soccer, football. And basically when he came here to the A-League, he's like, there's many things I hate about the A-League. He's like, but one of the worst things is no matter where you are, what you want to do in Europe, whether you're third division, second division, first division, every time you walk out, it's just that ear-ringing fan base, and it's packed stadiums. And he goes, as a player that's kind of in his twilight, retiring, he's like, that's all you want. You just want to step out into the field, and you just want a full stadium full of energy. And I'm like, that's what sport's about as a professional athlete. That's the fans, right?
And I think that, now that I'm sort of 5 years into my transition, I think it's become aware that I became addicted to that spike of adrenaline, like every weekend, right? Whether it was 18,000 in Toulon or 100,000 when you play at the Nou Camp, when one of our finals is at the Nou Camp and 100,000 people, right? That sort of rush that you get when you run out, like it's hard to replicate. And I think that's when you see so many athletes, doesn't matter what it is, so many athletes find themselves in trouble because they chase that high, right? Like
100,000
in unsavory ways. Yeah, like people.
You mean they chase it after their career? They chase
yeah,
it
like
during
once
their
you
career?
finish, right? Because you don't have that anymore. You don't have an opportunity, or it's an environment, or a situation where you run out and you get something similar to what you got literally, for that season I talked about before, 42 times a year. And then you're getting that times 15 years, 15 years long, like, and then all of a sudden you get none of that. Like, of course you can, I mean, I don't condone it, but I can certainly understand the mindset of some of the athletes that go down, finding that high in unsavory ways, because it's like, how else do you manufacture that high, right? And that's why you've got to have good support systems and good things outside of your rugby that sort of give you those types of things, whether it's family or the work that you do or whatever it might be. But
it's still not the same.
No, it's not the same. No. I mean, like, when I first retired, I was like, there are two things at the moment that this was sort of probably 3 years ago. 2 years into my transition, I was like, there's two things at the moment that I miss. And it's the application of a skill, like the mastering of a skill, like the chase, the pursuit of mastering a skill, right? Like passing all the time, you know, like just like you never become a master of it a pass. Like of course you get better, but you're still gonna have days with different variables and whatever else, where fatigue, conditions, communication, whatever it might be, where that pass isn't what it needs to be. It's on the back hip instead of out in front, whatever. But just that pursuit of it, like I missed. And then the other one was the adrenaline. So I was speaking to a mate, and he suggested, what about you learn how to fly a helicopter? I was like, sure, I'll go for a flight and see what I feel, right? And I was in a little R22, just a little 2-seater, and I'm scared of heights, right? And so I was getting that adrenaline, right? So I was getting that adrenaline. Well. Yeah, but I was getting that adrenaline, right? So I was like, that's a tick. And then with helicopters, you've got like a sort of handbrake with a throttle on it. You've got the joystick for this, but then you've also got 2 feet, right? And so every time you do something with one, you've got to have a reaction with the other and the other. So there's like a first, a secondary, and a tertiary movement, right? So it was just like that skill, and trying to master that skill was exactly what I needed at that time. And I mean, I did it I got 25 hours up on my license. I've got 25 more, and I can take you boys up, but I wouldn't jump in with me, but.
Kobe Bryant.
But you know, and it was never because it was never because I wanted to become a pilot. It was just the process was what I needed at that point, you know, and you know, and if obviously it stopped for a little while because of all the bushfires back in 2 summers ago, and then COVID for the last couple of years. It's sort of, and then also not having that sort of disposable income like I had when I first retired, because it's $500 a pop. You go up there for half an hour or whatever it is. So it's an expensive exercise, but I felt like if I hadn't found something like that what I would have found myself doing would have been more expensive. You know,
well,
either like financially or reputation wise or whatever.
Yeah, there's been some pretty nasty transitions, especially out of rugby. But there's been some good ones as well. Like, what kind of guidance do you guys get in terms of like when it comes to retirement from the actual associations and the head of the sport, or is it like literally, thanks for your service now?
No. Look, it's getting a lot better. Like I said, when I first started, it was sort of just in the early years of professionalism, and so it was sort of, you know, they were effectively kind of learning on the run about what players need, what sort of support they need, what are some of the trials and tribulations they're going to face throughout their career, and then also after it, right? Because in the amateur era, blokes had careers Monday to Friday, and then we're going to train in the evenings and then play on the weekends. So they already had that sort of that career set up for them outside of footy. Whereas once it became professional, when we came through, we just went straight into the program, and then.
From like 19 years old.
From 19 or something, right? So like at the start, they kind of said, you know, like, Drew, you need to study something. And I was like, do I need to?
Had you ever had a job?
Yeah, like my old man, I'd worked at a service station. I worked at footy clubs and things like that. I worked at a call center one time with like 8 of my mates.
Oh yeah.
Because we all just, all our parents were on us. Like we were selling fashion photography sessions, you know, those ones where they like, you know, that you see them in the mall and shit. There was about 8 of us. We lasted about 10 days.
Shit.
But yeah, I mean, I had a few jobs, but not a career, right? So anyway, when I first started at the Reds College, I started a business degree, pretty generic, right? Just to kind of do something because I had to.
Did you hate it?
Yeah, hated it. And also I just felt like I could do both. Like when I say both, the degree and rugby, I could do both okay, but none of them particularly well. I just at that point, I just didn't have the maturity, or I just didn't love the degree enough to kind of really commit myself to it either. So I just thought, you know what, I want to pursue the rugby thing, so I'm going to just shelve the education thing. And then because I just got used to that, I just never went back to it. You know, so but yeah, I mean now there's so many different courses and offerings for these players, whether it be university, TAFE, trades, even like entrepreneurships and all these types of things. Like they encourage you to do that now. And if there's any sort of course that you want to do, there's a fund that'll help players go and pay for that. And you know, so even licenses and things, like if you want to get boat licenses, truck license, whatever, if there's some type of thing for some type, like a career afterwards or something outside of rugby, then they definitely encourage you to do it. And look, it's something that they're definitely better at now than where they were in 2003, 2004 when I started. But even for example, I caught up with my old RUPA rep, which is Rugby Union Players Association, just the other day after gym one time. I was just like, mate, I'm at this point where I feel like I've got the passion ticked with my work at Stan and Channel 9, but I don't necessarily have the purpose ticked. Like I need something that's a bit more outcome based. I training for me and playing every week, I had an outcome, whether I trained well or I didn't train well, or we won, or I performed well individually. I had all these different things that you could kind of gauge whether I was doing well or not. And now, like, whilst I get feedback at Channel 9 and Stan, it's not really like, it's not the same in terms of the outcome-based world that I lived in, and the critique and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I caught up with Lockie, just last week, just to say, mate, wanted to just sort of start to pick your brain a little bit about, because at the same time as well, people are like, Drew, what are you passionate about? I'm like, what I did for 15 years, I can't go back and do that. So, and weirdly, I want to try to do something outside of rugby, just something, have the rugby for the commentary, but then do something else, and whether it's around sort of mentorship or teams or like leadership or communication, execution of game plans, the building of game plans, whatever it might be, right? Some things that are transferable from what I did in footy, but then can take it to the corporate business world or whatever. Yeah. And also put myself in the deep end, make myself uncomfortable, understand that I'll be at the bottom of the run rather than being at the top when I was in footy, like in terms of my stature in that environment. When I was retiring, it had weight because I had experience and I had respect and whatever. I understand that whatever environment I go in now, like that's, you're kind of like snakes and ladders, right? Like you're back down at the bottom and you've got to build yourself back up. And that to me is like, that's not daunting or like, it's not off-putting. Like that's like almost like a challenge, right? Like I want to put myself in that position to learn a new skill and to, and better myself at it. And sort of, again, that chase, that pursuit of being the best I can be in whatever position I'm in. So, but yeah, I mean, I think the Rugby Union Players Associations are doing a really good job in helping players transition, or at least prepare for transition, while they're in there, but then also afterwards, even like little things like around the mental health as well, like making sure that, I think there's still a ways to go that they need to work on in the moment, because you can't have one sort of sports psychologist or one therapist to a squad of 35, right? Like I've retired and I was like, there were times where I hit some some stumbling blocks. I'm thinking shit, and I'll get a bit down or a bit like lost or a bit, like all these different feelings or whatever. And I was
when you were playing?
No, when I retired.
When you retired.
And then I would be like, okay, I need to see someone. And of course there's that stigma attached to it and all the rest of it. And I was like, well, I mean, I've had a coach or a teacher in everything in life, right? Like from the moment I'm crawling, walking, talking, ABCs, 1, 2, 3, your teachers, your parents, then you go to school and they're teaching you maths, English, all the rest of it. Coaches are telling you how to pass and kick. And so I've had a coach or a teacher for everything in life except for life itself, right? Because for the life issues, for the life moments, you go to your nearest and dearest, like my mum and dad. If you've got issues with girls, or you've got issues, insecurities or whatever it might be, you go to like the people who are nearest to you. But I would go to them and they'd just be like, they just tell me, no, you're right. Like I was always in the right? Because there's a bias there. Like no matter how much, you want to tell someone, the God honest truth, there's still a bias there if you love them, right? So I was like, well, I kind of then just started looking at a therapist as like as a life coach, right? And even just that term, the different term that I coined it, was enough for me in terms of like getting over it and just taking myself to one, and just then actually really enjoying going to it to someone and talking about different things, like whether it's that the transition that I'm going through and the uncertainty or what I want to do, or the not getting the highs that I was used to getting, or whatever it is, going through breakups and things like that, like whatever it was, that's who I sort of turned to. And it was like but it took me probably 8 therapists to kind of find someone to.
Yeah, I was gonna say it takes a while to find the right person.
Find someone where I was like, where I was properly telling the truth. Like there was a few where I was telling the truth, but I was holding back. And like if you're going somewhere to tell your truth, then what's the point?
Doesn't work.
What's the point if you're holding back 20%? Because that 20% is the shit they need to know, you know. Like, so it took me probably 8 times until I found someone to, that I could properly open up to.
And what was that determining factor?
I don't know. I just think comfort. I just think that the fact that I wasn't holding back, I just found myself being able to just say things that I was probably holding back to other people or, to other therapists that I'd spoken to. I felt, this, and it may not have been the case, but I just felt there was like no judgment with this person rather than previous. And, it's just a matter of comfort, right? Like those comfort levels, if they're high, then you talk and all of a sudden you relax into it and, and then you walk away thinking that was heavy, but it was worthwhile. And so when I say with the Rupa stuff, I think there's a ways to go in encouraging people to speak to someone, because a lot of these kids, guys and girls now going through, like there's high expectations, there's social media impacts as well, like with everyone all of a sudden has got an opinion, they got access to these players immediately, and then you carry those types of feedbacks and critiques, and then you've got expectations and worry about whether you're going to get re-signed again, all these different anxieties and things from families. A lot of people sort of fund families and different, scenarios, and then, like selection, Wallaby, all that sort of stuff. Injury as well, like for injuries when you're going through that, it's a very isolating time. So I think there's a ways to go in terms of encouraging people to go and find someone to speak to properly. And because it doesn't just help your footy, it helps everything, right? Like it helps relationships, it helps friendships, it helps productivity, creativity, helps just like everything, right? So, so I mean, that's a pretty long-winded answer about what our players' associations do, but I think they do a really good job with the transition stuff with careers. I just think that I think it's one of those things, I think, in mental health across the board, I think everyone's becoming more aware of it, understanding it, and then, and just when you still feel like, I just think like with anything, there's no outcome with mental health, right? There's no end goal, there's no final whistle. Like it's when you're feeling good for a period of time until you're not feeling good, so you got to keep working at it. And it's just like anything, you just got to keep working at it, whether it's a relationship or work or whatever. You just got to keep evolving and growing in it. And I think with mental health it's the same, right? I feel like a couple of years ago everything was understanding and awareness and all that sort of stuff, and then all of a sudden COVID hits and we're hit with all these different elements and layers about mental health because we're all locked up at home, we're not being able to exercise, we've got no interaction, so there's always going to be something that's thrown at you that's different, which is why it's important to keep moving forward in that area.
How many players, well, first of all, I think it's good that you kind of went through that and said that, because it's especially with rugby, right? I mean, I was never in that culture, but I could imagine what it's like, be tough, shut up, get on with it sort of thing. Yeah. How many players do you think, or how many, I guess, closed door conversations have you had with people that are like struggling with this stuff, and you like go see someone and they're like, nah, I don't want to, like, I feel ashamed or... Yeah. I mean, look, it's definitely happened. It's like one of those things, and also another mate of mine said, when my car's broken, I don't bring it to my mate. I take it to a mechanic. Yeah, professional. So like same sort of thing. Like if you're broken, whilst talking to your friend is good, it's also better to go to a professional, right? Yeah, of course. They've got the tools and the coping mechanisms to be able to help you with whatever it is that you're going through. So, but there are definitely times where, different tours or different, because we spend a lot of time with each other on tour, right? Like you're rooming with someone. More often than not, you get to pick your roommate, so you get to pick people that you're getting along with really well and you're close and you connect with which then means you kind of get to know each other on a deeper level. And you're on tours and guys are having bust-ups with their girl on the phone and you're on the bed next to them. So it's pretty intimate, right? You get to know each other pretty well. So then you also know when someone's a little bit off. Their body language is different, or they're just a little bit not themselves, and so it might be me asking them and starting the conversation, because sometimes it's too hard to start yourself if you're the one that's hurting. So it's also the awareness of people around you that is also really important, because sometimes the hardest thing is to start the conversation, right? If you're the one going through it. So if someone else can identify it and start it for you, what's up?
Then you get that momentum, right? And it's like, it's not just like you're good and just like an okay is enough. Like press a little bit further and just not to the point where it's overbearing, but like, if you know someone well enough, you'll know when they're a bit off the pulse, But yeah, there's been a number of times when, I've encouraged people to go see someone, and and I've also had the same people encourage me to do the same as well. Yeah. And it wasn't until, like I said before, like I sort of looked at it in a different lens. Yeah. Saw it as a life coach as opposed to, me going and needing therapy and needing a shrink, you know, because, you know, you see all this stuff in America and on film and all that, like someone needs to see a shrink and they lay down on the lounge, like, look, you can do that if you want, but it's not always like that. But and so once I kind of got past that little stigma that was in my own mind about it, because I think that's probably it, right? The stigma that we all talk about is probably the stigma that we had ourselves. Like what we...
With everything.
Like, exactly, right? Like, I don't think I've ever come across anyone that's like said to someone who's seeing a therapist, "Oh, you're weak."
No,
You know, but you think if you're the person going through something, you think that someone's going to say that to you.
But there's
no
no
one
way
ever
you would
will.
say that to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's often the
So the
opposite.
stigma is actually inside yourself.
Yeah, well, it's often the opposite.
Usually it's
They
like,
go,
hey,
"Fuck."
can I get their number?
Yeah,
well,
exactly,
that's pretty.
right?
Yeah, it's pretty brave of you. Tell me more about it. I'm interested.
Yeah.
Well, it's like it's like when I go into the nail salon. Because I love getting a pedicure. I just like getting that shit sorted.
Yeah.
I hate putting socks on and my toenails fucked and it rips my socks. I just hate it. And you just go in and the stigma's in your head and you think, fuck, they're all going to laugh at me when I come in. All the girls are going to stare at me. And like you walk in and they're like, what do you want? You like yell out across the room, 15 women. Pedicure. They're like, yeah, cool, sit there. No one bats an eye. Everyone's on their phone.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
cool.
Everyone's
It's
just
all
doing their own
good.
thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
no one cares.
It's the same as like when you go to the cinemas on your own. You know, like there was like for a long time, you're like, I'm not going on my own.
Yeah, except I don't
It's
do
the best
that.
time. It's like it's the best.
Just admit it. Because you'll find
Sometimes I will. Yeah, if there's a flick on, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to see that. I mean, what? You don't talk to anyone in the cinema anyway.
So you got my number now. I can, we can hang out. We can hang out. I actually wanted to ask. Maybe you have or haven't considered this. Did you watch the movie Concussion with Will Smith?
Yeah.
A lot of the they started linking a lot of the head injuries and stuff, and I've looked pretty deep into it because my brother's in combat sports, so I want to like be on the forefront of the research for his benefit as well. But did you ever think potentially any of your own stuff that you went through, or potentially any of the other stuff that the other guys go through, is related to head trauma and CTE?
Look, when you're in it, like you don't even think about it, right? I mean, it's become something that we're more aware of in the last decade or so because more data and education and understanding and awareness is out and about because of it. But the only way I would ever link anything that I'm going through or anyone else to concussion through rugby is because of the things you hear. Like at no point have I got knocked out and thought, well, that's going to come back to, that's going to come back and hurt me, or, it's going to lead to something like this or whatever.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I'm kind of in the crosshairs with this one. Like, I think in some ways, like if you sign up for playing rugby, like it's a contact sport, and it's not a perfect scenario. Like every time, it's not like the drill. It's not a drill where the same outcome is going to happen every time, right?
Yeah.
So
You take the risk.
there's an element of risk about it, right? And there's an element that, sure, when you're a kid, that your parents are putting you in that situation, but then when you're old enough, I just kept putting myself in it. Like World Cup final 2015 went off for a HIA. Like there was no way I was not letting them allowing me back on the field.
What's
So
that?
you had to go off the field.
So I had to go off. I had a
What's
head
that
clash
age?
with Milner Scudder. HIA is a head injury assessment.
Okay.
So I went off mid-game of the World Cup final, and they said, take your boots off. And I went, yeah. And they said, gave me five words, right? Like apple, car, truck, like red, whatever. And I thought, okay, that's going to come back. And so I thought to myself, the red truck had the apples, and I made like
You had
a
the memory
sentence
techniques
out, right?
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And then they asked me all these questions.
This is like how to cheat.
Yeah.
How to cheat the test.
Well, probably, yeah. But I mean, I guess if I was present of mind enough to be able to do that, then I probably wasn't concussed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I was enough. I staggered enough on the field for the doctor to say 11 has to come off. But then asked me a series of questions about who we're playing, where we are, what day, all that sort of stuff. And then there was like a bit of strapping tape stuck to the floor, and I had to go like the sobriety test, right? Heel to toe, out and back.
This is in the middle of the
In
game.
the middle of the game, yeah. And I was like, so they walk out, turn around and come back, and they said, sorry mate, you can't go back on. I was like, why? They said, because you took 17 seconds, the time's 14. I said, yeah, but you didn't fucking tell me it was 14 seconds. You just said go out and come back. I said, that's a critical piece of information that I need to know, right?
I can go fast.
If you told me it was 14, I'd be under in 14. I was like, you've got to let me have another go at it, because that's a piece of information,
Yeah.
like a critical piece of information that you left out. And they're like, okay. And I went out and back like in like 10, and they went, all right, put your boots back on.
Have
Oh,
fun.
no, they said, oh, what was it? And I was like, the red truck took the apples, like whatever it was. And then he's like, okay, put your boots back on, and out I went back on the field. And you know, like I mean, I remember going back on and like sort of the peripheral underneath was blurred. Like,
Shit.
so like there was some type of
There's some damage.
hit. Yeah. But
Some
you know,
part of
like
the
of
brain
course,
not
like
firing.
I mean, if you give the decision to a player, then of course they're gonna, or an athlete or a fighter or whatever. Like, you know, like you're in that mode. You're gonna keep going, right? And so I understand that, and I don't know enough about it, right? There are some players or athletes that have since retired or whatever have gone on and had, I don't know, degenerative brain diseases or whatever it might be.
Yeah, they get the
I'm not
scan.
look, I'm not well versed on this, and maybe maybe that's to my own peril or whatever, but who knows? But I don't know. There's class actions now against rugby and all the rest of it, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like, unless you've been really like mistreated and mishandled by medical staff, or you know, if
Like you're saying,
if
I don't want to go out, and they put
if
you
they
out.
blatantly put you in a position that is like is dangerous and is against your will or whatever, then I don't know if we've got much to argue with. And I know that might be controversial, I don't know, but I just think we all, I don't know. I can't see myself, no matter what happens, coming to that point where I'm going to sue the game I love that gave me so much. Because in my situation, I was treated well by doctors. Sure, I picked up concussions and you know, along the way at training and in games and all that sort of stuff, but I don't know if there's ever been a player at any level of rugby that's ever played without getting concussed at some point, right? It's kind of part of it, right? Like, it's just, even if it's just like whacking your head on the ground sometimes, like, you know, if you're getting flung or something, like, I mean, it happens in the backyard, like with friends, and I don't know, it's just, it's obviously a big thing now because there's data on it, and now it's become like a big, I don't know, it's the safety aspect of it and all the rest of it, but it's disappointing to some degree.
Yeah, I see your perspective for sure. I guess maybe what wasn't fully, maybe players weren't fully aware of the severity that could happen, right? Maybe we just saw the concussion before. It was like, a little bit of memory loss or whatever, but we didn't know it got to the point where it's like, I want to take a shotgun and kill my entire family because there's voices in my head.
And that's what I'm saying. That's where I completely admit that I'm naive in this area, right? And it might be to my own undoing because, you know, like I've just not sat down and you know, and maybe some of it's through fear. Maybe it's the unknown that I don't want to know about.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's just like that. I completely understand that. You know, when you see some of those stories and you see like the horrific things that happen and what families have to then go through after the fact and whatever. Like I get that. But like I say, I've never experienced that, so I can only speak on my what I've experienced in my career and also then after. But look, and that's why I say, like, that's why I'm in this sort of crosshairs, because I don't know enough, and and maybe there'll be a time where I'm more educated on it and I have a differing opinion. Who knows?
But don't you think it's their responsibility to explain that to you before you go back out on the field? Not in that moment. I mean, just in general,
I mean,
like,
I think that now the education of it is much better, right? But also the knowledge is much better than where it was, because now there's all these like investigations and all these different things that are happening and exposing the severity of those things, or the potential severity and the possibilities of the scenarios that we put ourselves in. And that's where, as that stuff becomes more readily available, then so is the education, and then so is therefore the questions, right? Like, I mean, the decisions for players. Like, there's definitely been players in the NFL that have retired early now because of the concussion stuff, right? Like, and you see, you know, and I think it's a good thing when you see players like even, you know, the Boyd Cordners and the Jake Friends and those guys in rugby league here that are making decisions around head knocks, and you know, and it is taken more seriously. And I think it's because it's we've got more understanding of what we're actually subjected to. But yeah, I just think at some point we've got to also appreciate that we're going to get knocked out.
Of course. It's
like an MMA fighter going in and, you know, I mean, unless you're fucking really good, you're going to get knocked out at some point, right?
Yeah. No, it's just a numbers game.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, so we'll transition a little bit in this part of the show now. So we basically, the show's called Trending, right? So
sure,
we're going to go through some different topics Connor's going to introduce to us. But before we actually transition into those, we're actually going to drink some beer as well. Is that around somewhere? We're going to,
in the fridge.
Yeah, cool. We're gonna review some beer. You might probably, I think you probably had it before, but we're gonna watch this first.
Okay.
So this is so what do we got here? We got the 2015. So you were in this. You're in this squad.
Yeah.
So talk us through this. We're about to watch the. This is why you got to watch the fucking YouTube channel, people. We're about to watch the Haka, which is, if you don't know, there's a lot of Americans listening to this.
Yeah.
The Haka is essentially the traditional war dance of the Māori people that they would do to invading colonies and
it's like
invading
a challenge.
tribes. Yeah. So it's like basically what they would do to signal war.
Yeah.
And it's like, obviously globally it was made most famous by the All Blacks.
Yeah.
And they would always do it. Do they do it before every game?
Every test, yeah.
Every test. Okay.
Yeah, well,
cool.
I mean, look, it's so every home test they cater for it in the run sheet of the formalities going into a game. You do your anthems, and then, but there was a time where Wales over in Wales in Cardiff didn't allow time for the Haka to be performed afterwards.
Oh shit!
They just and so that was seen to be disrespectful from the All Blacks, and so the All Blacks performed the Haka in the dressing sheds, and they said it was basically the result was a foregone conclusion because of the disrespect. And the All Blacks went out and put 50 on them.
Oh wow!
So they learned the lesson.
Yeah.
50 to 0.
Yeah, no, not to nil, but they smacked them, right?
50 points is heaps.
Yeah, and then there's also a really cool one. The following year, they performed the Haka.
From this 2016.
No, sorry, from this Wales game.
Oh right, yeah.
They performed the Haka, and then effectively you don't walk away until the leader of the Haka or the captain of the All Blacks walks away, right? Because that's their challenge. They're like, okay, sweet, we're done. But then Alan Wynne-Jones, the Welsh captain, stood there, and the Kiwis just stood there, and the ref just kept coming up. Come on, Alan. Come on, we've got to move on.
So
We've
who's
got to
meant
move
to
on.
walk away though?
Well, I can't remember if it's meant to be like Richie McCaw in this instance, or if it was meant to be Alan Wynne-Jones. But either way, it was a standoff, right? And the ref was going between two captains, going, come on, and they just kept staring through and just looking at each other. They're like, it's 80,000 people there in a closed roof stadium. And there was just it was just a standoff for like 3 minutes. And this ref is trying to get people to go. Like, it was epic, right? Because of the one before that. But yeah, so this one here was the World Cup final.
What where are we? New Zealand?
No, this is at Twickenham in London.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This how many people in this stadium?
55, 60,000, I think.
Yeah, right.
But see, just pause there if you can.
So you played in 100,000.
Yeah. So see how
double this.
Yeah. So see how here they're all looking slightly towards like the left-hand side of the screen, like to their right.
Is that because they're all looking at you?
No, because
you got your nipple
so
out?
Czech was like, I mean, there's always like this one of these things like, what do you do to challenge it, or do you move forward, or do you turn your back? So I think someone's one team's done at one point, or do you whatever, right? So, but a lot of that's obviously seemed to be disrespectful.
Yeah.
Czech was just like, look, they've got their thing, they've rehearsed it, they've done it. We'll still pay it the respect that it deserves, but let's just change the script a little bit and just make them just be a little bit off, because normally they just do it looking straight down the barrel, right? But now all of a sudden they're just having to look a little bit to the side. Like it was just like something to make them.
So you guys all moved to the
so
left.
we just like our team sort of line holding each other was like offset. Like the end guy was actually in line with Richie McCaw instead of.
Oh yeah, so you got Sonny Bill in the back there.
Yeah,
he's like can't see from the other person.
Yeah. So see all like Ma and Richie and Kieran Reid and all these guys. They're kind of looking out that way because we all kind of like we set up offset to the left, thinking that it was going to be
What CT?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, exactly.
Strategy.
Yeah.
All right,
but this is pretty epic.
Like, do you remember this really clearly in your mind? Yeah, sick.
Yeah.
Fuck, it's loud, isn't it? Echoes through the stadium. It's crazy.
But see, also like the All Blacks, because they're sponsored by the by Adidas. See, everyone's got the same boot, the blackout.
Yeah.
Which is so rare these days. Like everyone's got their own boot.
Right.
See how they're all having to look to the side rather than.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it did nothing. There I am. Yeah, look me trying to look all serious and mean.
They're looking tough.
But
how old are you here?
31.
Yeah. Okay. Well, excuse my ignorance. What was the score?
I think they won by 12 points or something.
Don't need to go into that.
Yeah,
but how loud is it? Like, can you hear this? Because they're quite far from you, right?
They've also got some like stadium mics just in between us.
Oh, okay. So that's not how loud it actually is.
I mean, it's fucking loud, like when they're stacking themselves. But
what is the feeling that goes through your body when I would be shitting?
Yeah,
my
I mean,
pants.
like now I'm getting like my goosebumps. Like I'm getting it now. Like, I mean, there's been a few.
That's post-traumatic.
Yeah. I've had I've played in these guys like, I don't know, 19 times or something, right?
Yeah.
I think I've won twice, but but there's a few in particular that like that have stuck. Like there was one at Eden Park, and they were doing the Haka, and it was like lightning bolts going behind. Like it was raining, it was like lightning, and I was like, this is pretty epic.
Yeah,
like,
you're like on their land.
Look, yeah, exactly right, and it's like it's a traditional sort of home of rugby there, and that's like we haven't won there since the 80s or something.
Yeah.
But I love that it's part of the game. I don't think there's always been calls for it to be taken away because it's unfair advantage on them or not. But I just think it's because
come on, man.
Yeah, I know, right? But there are because in some ways it can be detrimental, right? Because they're so full of emotion. Like they're just heightened. Like
then they've actually just got to go play rugby.
And if you kick off to them straight away, sometimes there's if you look at the stats on that, if you kick off to them after the Haka, there's more often an error than if they kick off type thing.
There's an error on their end.
On their end because they're still
They're
like
too G'd up.
They're just too like emotionally high. But I mean, I don't know. That may not be the actual case, but there's some people that think that that's the argument, right? But
yeah, right.
Do you think there's any truth? They're watching and they're like, man, you could like when you look at that, they're like, oh, they're so pumped today. We're done. We're fucked.
I don't know necessarily. I mean, because the other thing is they've got a separate Haka, so one that's literally just
the
for
special
the All Blacks, the Capo Ponga or something, where they kind of do the throat slit.
Yeah.
And that's like they only do that like once a year, and that's for like their big game. So
I feel like that was the big game though. Where was the throat slit?
Yeah,
that was the final.
I think that was maybe just the traditional.
Maybe they
one,
just knew they were going to run through. They're like, oh, we
man.
don't need to use the good Haka.
But sometimes when they do that one, you're like, okay, fuck, we're on here.
Yeah.
That's good.
Gives a bit of an indication, like we're on.
How last bit on this before we move to the first topic. What was it like playing against Sonny Bill? Obviously, he's like probably the most famous rugby player in the world, arguably. And now he's like, obviously you guys commentate together and stuff, and he's had a very different retirement. He's choosing purposely not to step down as an athlete, which I definitely respect. Yeah. You've made a different choice, but like, what was it like playing against him, and then like, what's your relationship with him now?
Yeah, I mean, just to go on the choice thing, I think it's because I had no other choice. It's different if you're like the universal soldier like Sonny is, and you've just got like muscle on muscle, and he's got options. But look, he was, he's obviously just like a formidable athlete. Like, so straight away he had a presence about him. So like, even if it was in team meetings like leading into it, like his name was always mentioned, right? Because if you went low on him, you chopped his legs. He's always, he's got that offload that became synonymous to the Sonny Bill offload, right?
Yeah.
So it then meant that someone had to chop his legs, but then someone had to go high and wrap the ball, right? And then which meant every time it's taking two people out of the defensive line, and then if the All Blacks were smart, which they are, you use Sonny as a decoy, and then there's opportunities around him, right? So it was multifaceted in terms of the trouble that he caused, because it was the physical trouble, but then also as a result of that, the physicality and that presence that he's got, then you were short elsewhere, or you had to like adjust and make some decisions around him to try and shut them down, which might leave me on the wing with three guys coming at me instead of one, right? You're like, fuck. But that's kind of like how it was. Like, but then it was also like, sometimes, as a back three player and in counter attack, if I'm getting the ball, like there's probably one or two players every now and then that you just look up and you're like, okay, fucking avoid that guy. Like, like you look up and you're like, generally speaking, it's like you can get whacked, but like that's fine, it's part of it. Yeah. But there's always that one or two guys where you're like,
stings.
May as well avoid it.
Yeah, like I don't want to be that guy from, what was that prop from the Panthers? That just like it's like,
like he's on every highlight.
He's like
reel.
on every highlight reel, and Sonny
reel.
just like whacks him. I don't want to be that guy. And he's back. Like so like generally you could always sort of have a quick little glance. It's just like Wycliffe Parley was another guy that I played against in domestic footy. Played with him at Wallabies, but like he's another guy that you want to avoid. And Sonny had that kind of presence when you're coming back in that kick chase, you're making sure that there's either a gap or you're going back the other way. And and I think I say that with respect, like because you earned that, right? Like it's not because I'm fucking scared of the guy. It's just that he had some tools that I wanted to avoid, and it'd be stupid of me. It's not necessarily cowardice of me from running away. It's just stupid if I do. Like, I'm going to turn the ball over or I'm going to get whacked. Like, it's a smarter play for me to go somewhere else and try and pick a front row. Like, as silly as that sounds, because they're bigger, but they're not as dynamic and they don't have the footwork to put themselves in a position to whack you. Like, that's why we would always look for one of the front row single-digit number guys, because laterally they had no movement. Or not as much movement. And, you know, put a bit of late footwork on them. That's where you get a weak shoulder.
Must be a crazy feeling, like, because you've scored tries against the All Blacks. There we go. We're just getting smashed with an ad here. Connor on the panic. The adrenaline knowing that you got All Blacks running after you must be the. Well, I mean,
my first starting test was against the All Blacks, so it was like I think my second or third test match because the first two off the bench, but it was at fullback for the Wallabies against the All Blacks in Sydney. And Tana Umaga was the captain of the All Blacks at the time, like dreadlocks and just like
hardcore,
scary dude. Like predator, right? Like he's like mean, but you know, like loved him growing up. Like, and then all of a sudden I'm playing against him, and in the lead up to it, he was like, "We're going to test the young fullback at in Mitchell."
Well, he said that in the commentary.
He said it in the press, right? And I'm thinking,
he was on his hands and knees.
I'm just thinking like I can go into this Bledisloe in front of 80,000, just like, you know, under the radar. Ain't gonna happen. So I go out and I sing the anthem with, you know, obviously with all the boys, and All Blacks do theirs, and we go out for the Haka. And this is my first senior Haka, right? Like I'd played like junior sort of under 19 sort of stuff and whatever. But my first senior Haka, and it was just like fucking just so much going on. I didn't really know where to look, and then I tell this story, and apparently a friend of mine said it to Tana. He's like, he tells it differently, but maybe it's because that's just what I was thinking at the time, because I was like shitting myself. But I was sort of going around. I just caught Tana's eye contact, right? And I thought he was just staring at me. So I was like, "Don't look away, Drew. Like, don't back away. Don't be that little bitch, you know." Like, but then I was staring at him. I was like, "Fuck, maybe he thinks I'm challenging him." I'm like, "Fuck." And then I was in this like weird like sort of moral conundrum, thinking, shit, like, does Tana think I'm challenging him? Yeah. But I don't want to back away from his challenge. And so I was sort of watching it, and then, you know, and we finished the Haka, and I was still like super nervous, and like I the last thing I did before every test was I'd vomit, and you know, I just like all my nerves would come up like just real late before we'd run out. And
every test,
like every game, like.
Every game of your career, you threw up.
Club footy, Super Rugby, top 14, anything, right? Like, because I didn't have the mental capacity to concentrate for hours out before a game. Like, I would just drain myself mentally if I just was sitting there concentrated, trying to get myself in the zone for 3 hours. I'd just like sit there and think about shit. Yeah. If I played it in my head too much, I'd just be done. Like, so what I would do is on the game day, I would trust my preparation, because I did all the work through the week, looked at all the tape, did all the work I needed to do, just trust that I've got it there, right? So I'd go out to warm up, and I'm like singing, I'm like having a bit of a joke with players that I know I can joke with, because I don't want to put off other players that don't joke. I'm joking with like the water boy or the physio and that, because they know that, you know, they came to know that that was my ritual, my sort of my preparation. And then I'd go inside, and then the manager would go 3 minutes, like, you know, so it was just pretty much time to get your jersey on, and I'd go 3 minutes, and I'd go, shit, we're on. And then all those nerves that I've been pushing away all day would just fucking come up, and I'd quickly go to the bathroom and just go, and just vomit. And then I'd quickly join the huddle. And like
smelling like puke.
Yeah. And the captain's there, like, you know, having his like address, and I've just got the red eyes and the teary eyes. And they'd be like, "You're right." And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, let's go. Yeah, and so whatever. But this particular game, I didn't vomit, right? But then about 20 minutes in, I scored this try against the All Blacks in that first game. And I got back to halfway and just fucking threw up everywhere. Like, just threw
on
up
the
everywhere.
field?
Yeah, on the field. Yeah. Like, I've got this photo at home. It's like sort of me sort of from behind, side on from behind, kind of that back angle. Just hands on the knees, like vomit midair. The number 15 on my back. Yeah, like I was like, but it was sort of like all those nerves that just sort of just come up. And that was sort of the moment where, like, you know, when you say, what's it like having the All Blacks chase you and whatever, like I'd beaten Dan Carter and I stepped Mills Molina and I had Jerry Collins hit me and slide me over the try line, right? Like, that's like, I was like, fuck. But then when I scored that try, I was like, okay, now I kind of feel like I belong.
You deserve
it. You know, like, and now I can sort of stop all the worry and just like enjoy myself.
Vomit and get on
vomit. Yeah.
So got this puke to come up.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get there. Connor, what's our first topic here?
Cool. So we're going to jump into some big controversy lately around unvaccinated athletes and also the pressures around vaccinations for professional athletes in sport. I thought it'd be a cool conversation to have, and especially in light of Kyrie Irving. He's probably the biggest professional athlete in the world that made a big stand against it, but they've now, I'm not sure if they waived the rules, but he's come back in and he can play.
No, I think what happened was the governor of New York changed hands, and they because you follow the NBA, right?
Yeah.
And they basically allowed him to play home games, which is good timing because obviously they're coming into the playoffs now and they need him.
Was he playing away games?
He's playing away games, yeah. And like, in this particular case with Kyrie, he's not to go too far down the basketball rabbit hole, but he's one of the greatest players to ever play the game. And it was just a shame because he's getting older. He's in his 30s now, and it's like, fuck, we're gonna miss some of like the great, like
It's twilight.
You don't want to miss greatness. You know? Every season is an opportunity to like do something magical with a basketball. But my question to you, Drew, with this topic was like regardless of your stance on vaccinations or whatever, don't have to go about that. But yeah, if they had said, like, even if you'd had like fellow players and stuff that had gone, oh, well, I'm not going to get vaccinated or whatever, and they'd said when you were playing, you know, you can't play or whatever, how do you think that would have gone down?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one, right? Because whilst, you know, you say, oh, you don't have to go down the you know, whether I believe in vaccination or that would, of course, mold my decision, right? Or my opinion on it. I think in the situation that we found ourselves globally, it was the right thing to do by everyone to get vaccinated. Not because you wanted to play sport, not because you wanted to go to work. It's just because it lowered, of course it didn't eliminate anything, we all understand that. It lowered the opportunity for it to spread to people who were vulnerable, right? And I was like, fuck, you know, like, I get the flu shot every year. It's just like another strand of that. Like people saying now we're at the fourth booster, like, or whatever it is, like the fourth shot. Like, yeah, because it's mutating. Like it's like the flu mutates every year as well, which is why we get a different strand flu shot every year. Like, I mean, there's people smarter than me that are putting this out there. Like, and you know, I understand the argument of people just like, you're getting brainwashed and this and all that. I'm like, whatever. But I'm like, well, if you know, the majority of the population, 90%, or you know, we're up around 90% of the numbers are doing it, then I don't know. I just felt like it's the right thing to do, right? Like, and I appreciate that people like Kyrie and other players have got their own beliefs and reasons for not wanting to do it, but at the same time, then you know, which he was willing to take, that he doesn't get paid what he was signed for, and you don't get to go and live the life that necessarily that you wanted to live or do the things that you love doing. If your stance is stronger, if your stance against vaccination is stronger than your love for wanting to do the things you love, then you know, good on you. I mean, you stand for nothing, you fall for everything, right? But for me, like, and it's good on him for standing for what he believes in. I don't believe in what he believes in, so I would have been fine to go on and play. But I think I see the other side, you know, like people should have their own choice and whatever. I'm like, yeah, they should, but people then also have the choice who are making the decisions around looking after a city or a country to look after the majority of the people, and especially the ones that are vulnerable as well. So, I mean, I think it's one of those things. It's a complex scenario and one that's obviously forever changing because, I mean, the mutation of the virus is changing. Also, like, everyone almost expected us to have all the data on something that was brand new. Like, you know, like we're still living through it. Like, that's why different things change, restrictions or you know, advice around mask wearing or social distance, like all that sort of stuff's changing because, like, we've got to live through it to be able to have data on something. Like, you can't have data on something that's never existed before. So that's
where's
why
the long-term studies?
That's why I appreciate. You know, that's why I've got some tolerance and some patience for some of these things that are changing, and the goalposts are effectively moving because so's the virus, right? Like, and it's something that we're learning on the run. Or when I say we, people that are professional in those areas are learning on the run, and then it gets, you know, we get advised off the back of that. So, I mean, it's a difficult one, especially when you go to a place like the States, where there's all these different basketball teams in different states, and they've all got their own you know, rules around it. Yeah. So, like, Kyrie, effectively, he could play away games, but not in New York. So that's where it starts to become a little bit confusing, and where I think people, rightly so, get disenfranchised with the whole thing because they think if there's one clear way of dealing with it, then everyone should adopt it. But that's unfortunately people have their own opinions on it and you know go rogue and do their own thing. So
it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to watch from the sidelines, but
Yeah.
you have to respect people's decisions. And
Yeah.
in the context of the decision he made, it just meant that it got a pretty bad outcome. But it seems to be resolved now.
I think if players wanted to choose not to play because they don't want to get vaccinated, but then still expected the full freight salary, full signing bonus, image rights, all that, then I'm sorry, that's part of the decision. Whereas Kyrie's made that decision not to play. He's swallowed it up. He's sucked it up with whatever that meant in terms of percentage lost, and he's moved on with it. And, you know, the one thing I respect about Kyrie is he's not whinged about it. Like he said, this is what I believe in. This is what's happening. The comp went on without him, and he just was biding his time. Then he played when he was available, and then now it's sort of changed, and he's able to play. So like,
I think the same thing you could be said for Ben Simmons as well, right? He decided, okay, I'm definitely not going to play for these guys anymore. They don't want me here, and so I'm going to take a stance, and I'll lose the money, and it'll cost me money. So be it, you know. And that's, I mean, whether you think it's right or wrong, you know, he made his decision.
I mean, he's
got to respect
conviction in his decision, right? Like, and you know, I'm sure there's things around Ben Simmons' situation that we're not privy to.
So we'll get him on the show, so we'll ask him.
Yeah.
We'll find a way.
You know what I mean? Like, there's always, I mean, the reporters get some understanding of it, but they don't get all of it.
Yeah.
So, you know, if whatever it is that's making Ben Simmons hold out, well, that made him hold out for so long, is strong enough to him, then good on him. But it's almost like we feel like it's our right as fans to know everything, but it's not our right. Like,
no. Well, we'll find out one day eventually.
Yeah.
What do we got next, Connor?
Cool. Next up, big upset. The Lakers have almost got they thought they had their last glimmer of hope for the season, but it's now gone. They're eliminated from the playoffs. Pretty big upset, but
yeah, I wanted to bring this one up just because it's really like a conversation about salary caps and like money and bringing players together. Not so much about the NBA, but I think it was really good. Like, it was just a reminder again that like no matter how much money you have, you just can't buy a championship. And I wanted to ask you the question, like, obviously the money in rugby is very different to the money in the NBA, right? And some of these top American sports. But do you feel like, I don't know what the salary cap system is, how it works in rugby. But if there was more money in the game, like way bigger salary caps, you know, that paid you 10 million a season, 15 million a season, do you think it would make the game better?
Not necessarily, because it's got to be an even playing field. Like, you might have one or two clubs that have that type of cash, but then the others that don't. It's just
that's what happens in the NBA. They didn't make the final. That's my point.
So I mean, I'm not aware of the salary caps around and the money that's available for NBA. Is it the same across the board, or is it?
It is, but
like all those max contracts and all that sort of stuff. But not all teams.
They don't have the
choose
money
to fill it, right?
They don't have the money. That's
Right.
the difference.
So there is a cap, but they don't fill the cap. They can't afford it.
Yeah, they just like, there's different circumstances and weird rules and stuff that basically allow, if you have the money, you can spend more money. Right? There's still limits to it, but the Lakers have a lot more cash than, say, Charlotte Hornets, right?
Yeah. And, I mean, I think it's sort of the Premier League in soccer. Like, I completely respect and appreciate that a lot of people support that, but I just can't get around a competition that's got 4 genuine contenders at the start of the year. You know, because they're just the ones with all the cash and their stacked team, and then there's 4 or 6 at the bottom that are just going to fight off relegation. There's the same sort of teams in the middle that are just going to be floating around the middle.
That's not exciting for you.
That's not exciting for me. I like it when it's as close to even as possible, because then everyone's, you know, like it's not necessarily just about who you've got. It's about how you work with each other. It's about the culture that you've got. It's about like all the different little parts of performance that you can find an edge, rather than just
throw money at the
top
problem.
office.
Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, it's never gonna. I don't think it would change in basketball, but I just think, you know, like especially in the last 5 to 10 years in basketball, it's just become super teams. You know, like, and you know, there's a lot of movement in basketball mid-season which you don't see in rugby, but that's probably a big difference. But you know, when you look at the super teams, you know, look at Ben Simmons now going with Kyrie and KD, and you know, like and they're in that, what is it, the play-in tournament? Like, you'd have to think they're going to go through on that, and then like they're anything now that they've got all their players on the court. I saw LeBron sort of say, you know, when asked why didn't you guys do well together, he's like, well, because we were never on the court together, like for a period of time, for long sustained periods of time to kind of get cohesion and understanding of how they play and get the best out of them. I mean, that would have been the worst for the people paying for their contracts to not see them out there, right? Like AD was injured for ages. Russell and that Frank Vogel weren't seen eye to eye. He was benching him all the time. Like LeBron had a few injuries this year, so they weren't actually all able, like the big three for them weren't able to kind of be out there for a long periods of time. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, whilst I love seeing those super teams, I'm also like, I'd prefer to see a more even competition and things like.
Well, I mean, F1's the worst example of how money can make the sport unfair, I guess, you know, because it literally buys you a faster car, and a better pit crew and like more marketing and all this sort of stuff. So it's been basically the same 2 or 3 teams for the last 20 years or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I can see a point. I think ultimately though, it's not how much money and it's not how it's evenly spread. I think it's just like how it's spent. It's
100%.
Ultimately what it comes down to.
I mean, going back to when I was talking about my time at Toulon, right? Like the respect and the work ethic that we had just for each other was what contributed to, like, whilst we had arguably the biggest signings in world rugby in the one team playing domestically at least, there was like just a work ethic and a respect with each other that made us successful in those in that period, you know, like whereas they kept trying to do that and some people changed and personnel changed and the respect and the work ethic and that type of thing started to diminish a little bit, and and so did the results. So you're right, like it's not just about going, you know, like it is in fantasy rugby, you know, fantasy league or fantasy basketball, and you go and pick your players and because they're the highest and they get the most points or whatever. It's not the same because, you know, egos are involved and you know, especially, you know, in basketball, like it seems like some pretty big egos, right? Like huge, and some players don't work well with others, and some want to be the guy bringing the ball back, and some want to be the you know, the one taking the final shot all the time, and you know, and sometimes whilst they talk about I'll be able to share that, get in the moment, and they don't get it, and like you see them like walk off the court without even like going to their teammates or like that kind of shit. Like I mean, that's just not something you see in rugby, but you see it a bit more over there in NBA. Yeah, for sure. I just need to do a quick little text here, fellas. Yeah, do it. And then Connor, what do we got on the what do we got third here? What's our next topic? Fashion tip. Fitness fashion tip. So for those listening at home, Drew actually is he takes a lot of our fashion advice, even though he's never listened to the podcast. But basically what we always go on about is like keep the colors at a minimum when you're training at the gym, and keep it grey tone and black white. Just like I don't think I've ever seen him with color on, except maybe blue jeans today. But no, he's good. Sticks to the theme, black and white at locker room. Do you stay away from anything like remotely close to gold? Because then people are like, oh mate, give it up, like get over it. I mean, I definitely won't wear any of my old training gear. Or, like I've got like a storage unit just nearby. But like even something like that, gold like that, would you be like, Matt, couldn't put that on? Yeah. See, if Drew rocked up in like, imagine if he had like Wallabies like shorts on or whatever. I was like, I wear full kit. So no, I wanted to keep this on theme for Drew, but like one thing that I just think you should avoid altogether, probably not avoid as much as the 5-finger shoes we talked about one week, but the Canterbury, is it Canterbury, the rugby brand? Oh yeah. Yeah, those shorts, the rugby shorts. They're sort of the cotton ones. The footy shorts. Just like really short shorts. The really short ones that guys train with in the gym. Yeah. It's just got to let it go. Yeah. Well, I think it's not a good look. I went to the States, I played rugby there for a year. Like they did not get around those shorts. Yeah. I was like made fun of ruthlessly when I pulled up in those. I mean, look, you've got to have a couple of good teardrops in the VMOs to be rocking those sort of shorts, but. Yeah, I mean, those were sort of big when you're at school. Exactly. Yeah. Not when you're 35 and training at the gym. This is what you're talking about, yeah? Yeah. But those things are also horrendous for chafe. like I couldn't do any type of exercise without tights on anyway, but those things in particular, because they were cotton as well. Back in like when you're young and you run around in those for a game and
Yeah.
you're in some trouble.
They're
Yeah.
a long way from
Like-
Lululemon.
You just
Yeah.
when I see people doing CrossFit in them and like because they soak up so much sweat and they end up just looking like they wet their
Yeah.
pants in the workout. I'm like, guys, we have like really good fabric technology.
Yeah.
Go to Nike, go to Adidas, literally any brand except Canterbury right now. We're not playing footy, so
Yeah.
the
It's,
tip.
I mean, I think because obviously lifting people in lineouts and the scrum and that, like, it served its purpose, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be training in them.
No,
No,
not in the gym.
no.
Yeah, we've got gym wear, we've got Gymshark,
Yeah.
whatever. Take your pick, RecGen. So anyway, so next part of the show
Hold
here.
on, sorry. I just want to go on my little bit of
Go for it.
fashion. Yeah, it was, I can't wear, when I'm training or doing anything active, anything other than white footwear.
Yeah,
Like,
I've noticed that.
yeah, so white footwear for me, like, so black boots or black trainers literally remind me of when I was at school.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like
Black
shoes.
school
You
shoes.
got the school shoes on, right? So just in your peripheral, if you just look like in sort of at the bottom of your eyes and you see black, like I feel flat. Like I feel like I'm walking into the ground rather than in my white shoes, I'm walking on top of the ground. And it's like, it honestly became like a thing for me when I was playing.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, like, so you had the full OCD around it.
Yeah, so like in 2015 World Cup, I was sponsored by Under Armour and they wanted to promote this black boot. And I was like dead against it. And I think I played a half a game against Uruguay in it.
In
And
black
then-
boots.
In a black boot.
I hate black boots.
And then I just went,
Nah.
sorry. Just
Yeah.
went the white ones for the rest of the tournament.
And you lost the contract because of that?
No, they were understanding. I just said,
Okay.
guys, I'm in a fucking World Cup. Like, I gotta feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is less about marketing, more about performance for me. And
This is more
So
about
you always-
fashion,
you
less
always-
about
yeah.
You
I
always-
said performance, but I meant fashion. Yeah.
So you always wore white boots your whole career?
I mean, I definitely started like back in when I first started, there weren't white boots around. My Colts, I was in the Copa Mundials, the old 3-stripe Adidas ones.
I wore Copa Mundials.
Yeah, and then once the white ones sort of started getting a bit more, like you could get, it wasn't just one brand doing one boot in white. Like it's now like you can get any boot in white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it became a thing.
Yeah, that's it. No, I've always been a fan. My theory behind white shoes, I won't explain the story how I got to this theory, but my theory is that white shoes look so good because basically as humans evolved, right, from like apes in caves with clubs, right, and just ruthlessly shagging each other nonstop, our feet, right, would have always been dirty, like
Sure.
nonstop, right? Basically, would have never had clean feet. And if you think about footwear through like medieval times, Middle Ages, like industrial age, you're still looking at like no one's wearing white shoes at this point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
White shoes is a very, very modern invention. So like throughout all of human history as apes, we would have evolved to see feet as black, right? And dark and dirty. And then I think that maybe there's like some hard wiring in our DNA that when we put white on, which traditionally has been the dirtiest part of the human body, you're like, fuck, that looks so good. That's so clean and fresh and different. Because there's honestly like, there's pants and there's this and hats and whatever, but there's just nothing like you put on brand new white shoes and everyone notices. They go, dude, fresh shoes.
Yeah, pop.
There's just something about that. And my theory is that like our
It's like wired in
actual
us.
hard wiring, like
Yeah.
our DNA is like, that should be black.
You
And
expect
when
to
it's
see dark.
Exactly. And when it's white, you're like, your circuitry is like, whoa, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That's sick.
I'm on that.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
that's science.
Yeah, and
Science
also
with Drew and
those
Locke.
Neanderthals, they were walking on top of the ground. No, they were walking into the ground. Weren't they?
they
Slumped over, walking into it, dragging their club.
That's why they got eaten.
Yeah.
Well, some of them had to survive. All right. So last thing we got here, we're going to try. I haven't tried this. So I'm actually excited to try it. So Drew, basically, we're going to. I think have you had better beer before?
I have, yeah.
Have
So-
you had the ginger beer as well?
I haven't had the ginger. No.
Okay. So from the boys at
Thank you.
Inspired Unemployed, I actually would love to know how much they actually own of this beer company.
Yeah.
For their sake, I hope it's more than 50%. But they've come up. There's been like low carb, low calorie beer for a long time, but they've made their version of it, obviously with their social media power. What do you got here? The ginger first.
No, so this is the normal.
Oh, it's a normal beer. Okay, so we're going to give this out of 5. You've
Do
had
you,
it-
do you
you've had it
drink
before,
do you
right?
drink low carb beer? That's really the question.
Yeah.
You do drink it, yeah.
Fuck yeah,
And
Mads.
and high carb beer.
Yeah.
and
Look,
white spirits and
I've tasted this before, and I think also one that we won't be able to get just on the sample sizing is its drinkability for more than, like a 6-pack. Because like some beers...
We can try.
Stay away from rugby players. I'm gonna need to drink 6 of these.
No, because sometimes... But like when you have like 6 beers and you feel bloated, it feels heavy. It sits heavy on you, right? Like you're like, oh shit. Like whereas this, it's a good light sort of sitting beer that you can.
Have you had 6 of these? So like you.
Oh yeah, like I've
you've
more than 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's a beer that you can keep going to, and I'm a fan.
Nice.
Yeah.
Try the ginger.
All right, so we're going ginger beer now.
We don't have it.
Yeah, it's over.
Yes, you do. Lucky does.
Oh yeah, sweet.
What would you give that out of 5?
Look,
Yeah.
What are you rating it on? It's hard.
You got to rate it on taste right now, right? That's what
taste
we
is
got.
good.
I
In terms of beer, I don't like this new craze of making beer taste like fruit.
Okay, so we're the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
You like all the IPAs and the XPAs?
Mate, I pour myself half a centimetre of beer.
yeah.
You've poured you guys a full glass.
Yeah, Drew was just saying. No, you know why? It's because I had this on the weekend and I loved it.
Yeah, right.
It's better than the other low carb options, though, I think.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
better than
yeah.
like a super dry.
Yeah. I mean, Super Dries is good too, but I definitely like better beer. But like all these like fruit infused craft beers and shit that you get now, like
Love them.
I'm not on that.
Like mango
Wait.
IPAs and stuff.
Yeah, any of it.
Watermelon
I want my
IPA?
beer to taste like beer.
I don't.
See, like Corona, I even throw the lemon or the lime out. Like, I don't
See,
even
we
have
are. We're from a different cloth.
Like, I don't
We're
want that
cut from a
little bit of
different-
fruit.
I'm like, no. If I wanted fruit, I'd get like a fucking seltzer or like a
I've not had a seltzer,
or a
but
juice.
see, the thing for me is, now I'm going to compare my athletic career to yours. So when I was doing competitive CrossFit, basically we were training full time and we didn't drink. We didn't have time to drink, right? And there's no culture around drinking in CrossFit. It's literally like train, like it's all about diet, nutrition, and getting the edge in training. And so we didn't do any of that. And at this point I'd moved out and I was living in the inner west. And that was like right when the kind of craft beer craze was taking off. This is when like young Henry started, cutting their teeth, making them out. This is when Carifta opened its first thing. So you got craft beers on every corner. And then we basically like retired from CrossFit competing. And I was like, I basically live in a beer factory. And so I started getting into beer. And at this point I'd had beer, lots of 15, 16, 17. And basically at 18, once we started CrossFit, stopped. How long did we go to? 23, 24, 25 when we stopped.
About
And then
6
I was
years.
like, oh, cool, I'm going to get back into drinking again. And the only beer that was around, everyone's like, you got to go try craft beer, this, that.
Yeah.
And so I just went straight into craft beers. And then I just got used to them. And
Right,
now
see,
other
I
beers,
find them sit heavy. Craft
they
beers
sit
heavy.
super heavy.
Yeah.
One or two.
I don't even like pale ales. I want a fucking lager.
So you don't like you don't like Stone and Wood?
No.
Oh, shit, yeah. We're not going to get along.
No, it's just we won't drink each other's beers. It's
Yeah,
actually
that's
better.
good. Yeah, we'll go gin and tonic. Okay, so...
No, I go gin and soda. Tonic got too many calories. It's too sweet.
too many cows, but 100 beers.
Andy's all over me. He's like, Drew, just get on the sodas.
No, tonic
This is
does have
good.
calories. Okay, so hold on. We didn't give the better beer out of 5, so I'm going to give it a 1 because it's not my type of beer.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Nah, I can't drink that.
I'd give it
That's
I'd give it a
feral.
3 out of 5. Like I probably wouldn't. If I was going to get a low carb beer, I think it's the best low carb beer.
I'm like 4.5 to 5.
Yeah.
Like if I see that in a bottle, because it's not always available, right? If I see that
That's
in a bottle,
because it is sold out everywhere.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If I see it there, I'm getting it.
You're
Nah,
trying
man,
to
that's-
make a beer, not a beer, Lockie.
That's
what you
gross,
want.
man. I don't like that at all. Look, this is just how different we are.
You didn't like the ginger beer?
Nah, it was rank.
Oh, wow.
Nah,
I don't mind it.
I really liked the ginger
Look,
beer.
I used to brew my own ginger beer, alcoholic ginger beer, when I was 15. Like I used to brew my own beer and ginger beer and sell it to my dad.
oh my god, I don't want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Bootlegging. And then like I'd go away on like trips with my mates from school and I'd take like ginger beer and shit.
And then we get you hammered.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Because I didn't know
fantastic.
how to gauge the alcohol,
Alcohol
content.
content. About 7 shots in this
Like
class.
moonshine.
Okay, so we've just had the ginger beer. It's supposed to be a low calorie ginger beer, right?
Yeah.
The ginger beer that hit the market, the really big one that hit the market. Give me the name of that one
James
again.
Squire.
No.
that one?
No. There's a really big.
Oh, Bundaberg.
Nope. There's a ginger. No, that's a non-alcoholic ginger beer. There's an alcoholic ginger beer that hit the market. I want to say like 7-8 years ago, and it's basically the only ginger beer that every pub stocks, and it's fantastic. It tastes incredible. It tastes like actual sweet ginger beer. I think why I don't like that is because they've pulled all the sugar out of that, right?
Yeah,
They
that's
got-
low sugar.
yeah,
No,
15 grams of sugar.
Yeah, that's why. This
Is it
other
the
one
Brook-
has like 40.
Brookvale Union.
Yes, that's it. What's it?
That is very
Brookvale
good.
Union.
Brookvale Union. Yeah, that is unreal.
You've had that, Drew?
I could drink.
No, I haven't. No.
Mate, I
Maybe.
could drink 500 of those in
Really?
a night. Yeah, I'd kill myself on
500.
those. Yeah.
The James Squire one's pretty good as well.
If I could, I would. No, it is actually delicious because it tastes nothing like alcohol.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's
Yeah, and that's the danger. Right?
When we hang out, we'll drink that together. That's gonna be our beer. That's fantastic. So that's like that's like a shitty like no sugar version of that. But
so do we give this one out of 5 based on ginger beers, or do we give it based on beers?
No, on ginger beers.
Yeah.
Ginger beer,
So like as far as ginger beer, it's up there.
Yeah, it's like a 4 out of 5. It's good. It's a really good ginger beer.
I'll probably. Have you guys had that one?
No.
Brookvale Union?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, shit.
But they've just done more sugar in it, so I guess it's sweeter.
You've had Bundaberg ginger beer, right?
Yeah.
It just tastes like that, but just
right.
And that tastes amazing.
Yeah,
That's full of sugar, 50 grams or whatever. So
Yeah.
and they basically taste
Sugar
identical. Yeah. So I'm gonna give that one probably a 2.5 out of 5.
Tough judge.
Yeah.
It's a tough judge, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go 3.5 to 4.
What would you do if you brought out Drew Mitchell's beer? I can say you've thought a lot
Well, yeah.
about
Let's
this.
go fantasy Drew business. What
Well,
would
I
you
mean,
go into?
I had a wine company, Backline Wines, with myself, Gitz, and Adam Ashley Cooper, and it's sort of dried up.
Fizzled out.
No, it was
Drank
going
all the
alright.
wine?
We just saw saw things differently with our business partner and just sort of parted ways. But it was good while it lasted. It was delicious. I mean, I just had a shitload of wine at home, and it was good from McLaren Vale down in Adelaide. So that was it was fun, the process, right? Like finding names and going down, doing the testing, until we're happy with it, and the branding, all that sort of stuff. But it's probably, I don't know, beer. I'd definitely lager, drinkable.
So you like the idea of starting an alcohol potentially,
Yeah.
or would you rather get into like a sports drink or a protein bar or something?
You know what I fucking would really like is, do you know Gatorade Grape and Blue Bolt and Orange, those three, right?
Yeah.
How well versed you are in beer, I think, is how well versed we are in Gatorades.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So have that, maybe with not as much sugar because it's not great for you, but with some sort of alcohol like vodka or something.
I agree,
like,
100%.
Like, why is that not being done?
Yeah, hydrate and get hammered. Yeah.
Because you'd
Like-
feel better the next day.
Oh, but I mean,
Drew, you're onto something.
yeah, maybe I
It's not
shouldn't
the
tell it
fir-
all your
it's not the
listeners because someone out here over in the States work with Coca-Cola and they'll be like,
Yeah.
fuck, why have we not done that? But yeah, I just think, I mean, so many times I'll get, just to start off, especially if it's, you're backing up after a big night, you're going again day 2, throw a bit of Gatorade in there, top it up
100%.
with some vodka and you're on. Like, it's
And
delicious,
you're
man.
playing the All Blacks.
I'm definitely a Gatorade man than a Powerade man.
Yeah, of course.
Man, for me, it doesn't really matter too much. I like both, to be fair. Yeah, I like the flavors in both. Some have I prefer Gatorade in this flavor, but I think the actual branding of Gatorade I prefer way more. Because Gatorade's American, right?
Gatorade is the original one, like from the Gators, like the Florida Gators.
And Powerade's
Powerade
the
is the Coca-Cola
Aussie.
rip-off.
Yeah, okay.
And then Powerade is like high fructose corn syrup, whereas they just use like glucose in
Yeah.
Gatorade.
I mean, that's gone into it, like,
Yeah.
We're in detail.
yeah. I just,
Just like, relax. I just like the taste, man.
Yeah, just running over like from training sessions, and sometimes we get Gatorade, and other times you're sponsored by Powerade.
Yeah. Guys, sort it out.
Give me some grape.
All right, well, we smashed that. How long we go for there?
Hour and 47.
We killed it. So Drew, you actually have a few things going on. You're a commentator, so people just watch sport and you'll be on there sometimes. So how does that work? And then you actually have a potty as well people can listen to.
Yeah, that's right. We're on SCN, so live on Sunday mornings, 11:70 is the
Hold on,
SCN,
so you're on the
11:70.
radio?
So yeah, radio's 11:70, and then it gets packaged up into a potty afterwards,
Cool.
which is cool. We've,
Do Sunday mornings.
Sunday mornings 10 to 11. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll say you
it's
can still
live,
party
right?
on Saturday and make it to the.
Yeah, sometimes I Uber into radio. And, but no, it's been good. Like, we spoke to Dan Carter on the weekend, just talking about some stuff that he's up to, trying to get some people from not just obviously Australia based, but time zones permitting. We'll get some international guests on and stuff. But it's more just like I said to you guys before, in terms of my involvements in the pre-game stuff for commentaries. You only touch on things, right? You don't really get to deep dive on any topics or talk at any great detail or length about anything. So having this sort of the radio podcast sort of platform allows you to kind of go into things a little bit more, which is quite cool. But yeah, just do that. And like you say, the commentary stuff, which is cool. And but then now looking at trying to find something with a bit more purpose.
Get this Gatorade drink off the ground. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. No, that's
I'm
good.
thirsty now.
We No, it's an honor to get the first Wallaby on the show. So thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
And man, thanks for being like a great ambassador of the gym. Yeah, it's been short, but it's been really good.
No, and look, guys, thanks for reaching out firstly, but also, yeah, just welcome me into the environment where I want to keep coming in, and it's holding me accountable, and you know, I want to come in and work out, and I'm enjoying kind of getting a bit of tin on the back and lifting a bit of heavy weights and stuff again. It's like I said, you know, it's, through the podcast, it's weird how you realize some of the small things that you miss when you once you've retired. You know, like who would have thought I missed putting some weight on my back? You know, of all things. You know, like, but it's funny, like that some of those little things are quite satisfying when you haven't done it for so long. So thanks for having me in, and
pleasure,
and pushing me.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thanks.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll speak to you all next week.